We are at Hudson Falls High School in Mr. Rosel's World War II Living History class.
He teaches us pretty much everything there is about World War II. He's an expert.
And this time of the year is specifically the Holocaust portion of the class.
We talk about the different types of camps. There's the labor camps, there's concentration camps, and then full-blown killing centers like Auschwitz and others in Poland.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, we're studying the Holocaust, and we're looking at the impact that the liberation of the camps had on not only the survivors, but also the GIs, the soldiers that stumbled upon these camps in the closing days of World War II, in the spring of 1945, in particular the American soldiers at Dachau in Germany. And as you know, tomorrow is the anniversary of the actual liberation of the camp 69 years ago. 14 years ago today, we were privileged to have Richard Marowitz here up at the high school in New York State. This morning he was interviewed down at the New York State Military Museum. And today we're going to actually watch some of the interview that Richard gave. And we'll talk about a little bit more about the liberation of Dachau.
Well, we took Dachau, the concentration camp. Dachau was only 9 miles from Munich. So we said, what the heck, let's go to Dachau. And that's what we did. We smelled it long before we got there. And we thought it was dead animals in the field, cows or whatever. But, you know, we had no idea. We hadn't seen it or heard about it yet. So that's what we thought, dead animals. But when we got there, that was a whole other ballgame, because we started to look around. And there were, in the vicinity of 40 to 45 boxcars piled up. And that is not a pretty sight, because it wasn't a neat job. They just threw them up in piles, bodies, piles of bodies. Too many bodies to believe. And that was tough to see.
These are bodies, or they're human beings, that were being moved around at the end of April 1945 by the Germans from other camps because they're trying to get rid of the evidence as the Third Reich is beginning to collapse.
The first thing is a shock, and then you cannot believe it, but you can't help yourself going and looking a little further because it's so hard to believe. Not that you want to see, you know, that kind of stuff. You don't want to see that kind of stuff, but you can't believe it.
I can understand it because, you know, we watched several different videos about liberations of camps, and just that whole afternoon was absolutely eerie for all of us that were in here, and that was just watching a video. To see the people, you know, 60 or 70 years ago have to deal with this in person and understand what was going on, it's horrifying.
They went through, they searched these boxcars, and according to Richard, he remembers finding one guy alive out of maybe a couple thousand.
A hand was doing this at one of the bodies in the boxcar. And one of the guys spotted it, and one of the officers jumped into the boxcar. And then my buddy jumped into the boxcar, and they handed him out. Dachau was a big camp. There were well over 30,000, I think, in that camp. When we first got there, they were up on the roof and yelling, "Americana, Americana." They realized they were being freed. So when we got into camp, they were running and kissing you. You know, they couldn't get enough of the guys. And we weren't there long because we had to carry on.
Combat forces arriving at Dachau really were in no position to provide medical care or food, clothing, or those types of sustenance for the inmates. They had a mission to do, remember? Munich was the goal for the 7th Army. Rich would continue on with the 42nd Infantry, the 222nd Infantry Regiment of which he belonged, and drive into Munich the very next day.
It was very traumatic for a lot of our soldiers. Richard remembers what he saw. Okay, some of these guys are so shocked they can't speak. Some of them break down and cry. Others stomped around in rage, just sheer rage, sheer anger at what they were literally witnessing. So you have to try and understand what was going through the heads of our liberators.
I'm a firm believer that history always repeats itself unless you learn about it, unless you know about it. And I think that knowledge is power, and if you're ignorant towards it, you are basically letting it, take a course again. And unless we do something and learn about it and take it in, there's always that risk.